For over 700 years, the samurai ruled Japan with their unmatched discipline, loyalty, and swordsmanship. But in 1877, this centuries-old warrior class faced its final battle. The Satsuma Rebellion marked the end of the samurai's way of life, a dramatic clash between tradition and modernization. Why did these legendary warriors, once the backbone of Japan, rebel against their own government? How did the rebellion lead to their downfall and the rise of a new military power? In this video, we'll dive into the story of the last samurai uprising, exploring the events, the key players, and how it forever changed Japan's future. For centuries, the samurai weren't just soldiers, they were a way of life in Japan. Think of them as Japan's version of medieval knights. They followed a strict honor code called Bushidō, which dictated how they fought, lived, and even how they died. In feudal Japan, they were the elite, tied closely to the shoguns and lords who ruled the country. But things started to change in the 1800s when Japan's feudal system, which had kept samurai at the top of society, began to fall apart. The government wanted to modernize and unify the country, especially after seeing how powerful Western nations were with their industries, constitutions, and modern armies. The samurai suddenly found themselves out of place. Their role as professional warriors was no longer needed. New laws banned them from wearing swords, their pensions were replaced with bonds, and they were excluded from the new government's plans. This wasn't just about losing jobs, it was about losing an identity. The samurai weren't commoners, but they weren't nobility either. They became shizoku, a confusing middle ground that left many feeling lost. So, what pushed the samurai to revolt in 1877? It wasn't just one thing, it was a build-up of frustration, humiliation, and anger. The Meiji government, which came into power in 1868, wanted to modernize Japan fast. They ended the feudal system, took land from the lords, and turned samurai into ordinary citizens. At first, samurai were given pensions, but by 1876, even those were replaced with bonds, which lost value due to inflation. Many samurai didn't know how to handle this sudden financial shift, and they lost their money quickly. The government's changes didn't stop there. A new conscription law in 1873 created a national army where anyone, no matter their class, could serve. This was a direct blow to the samurai, who had always been Japan's exclusive military force. To make matters worse, the government banned samurai from carrying swords in public, stripping them of a symbol of their identity. Saigō Takamori, a former samurai and one of the rebellion's leaders, became a rallying figure. He had served in the Meiji government but grew frustrated with its direction. He wanted war with Korea, partly to give samurai purpose again, but the government rejected his idea. Angry and disillusioned, Saigō left Tokyo and returned to Satsuma, where he started private schools focused on military training. These schools became a hot spot for rebellion, and when the Meiji government sent investigators, tensions finally boiled over. The stage was set for the last stand of the samurai. The Samurai Rebellion began with a bold move. In February 1877, Saigō Takamori and his followers marched toward Kumamoto Castle, hoping to capture it and spark a larger uprising. But the plan didn't go as expected. The government troops inside the castle were ready, and they had modern weapons like rifles and cannons. The samurai, relying on swords and older firearms, were at a big disadvantage. One of the most intense battles happened at Tabaruzaka, a narrow mountain pass. For over a week, both sides fought in the pouring rain, making the conditions even more brutal. The samurai fought with incredible bravery, charging straight into gunfire, but the government army was larger and better equipped, slowly wearing them down. The samurai retreated to Kagoshima, their home territory, for a final stand on Shiroyama, a hill overlooking the city. By this time, the rebellion was all but over. Saigō and his remaining men were surrounded by thousands of government soldiers. The government even brought in warships to fire at the samurai from the sea. The final battle at Shiroyama was tragic. Outnumbered and outgunned, the samurai still fought fiercely, refusing to surrender. Saigō was injured during the fighting and reportedly took his own life to die with dignity. By the end, nearly all the samurai were killed. With the rebellion crushed, Japan moved forward into a new era. The Meiji government wasted no time in making more changes. The samurai, once powerful and respected, were replaced by a national army made up of ordinary citizens trained with modern weapons. Feudal systems were completely dismantled. Samurai lost their privileges, like carrying swords in public, which had been a symbol of their status. Now, everyone was supposed to be equal under the law. The government also pushed industrialization, building railroads, factories, and modern schools to catch up with Western countries. Even though the samurai were defeated, their values didn't disappear. Ideas like loyalty, discipline, and honor became part of Japan's identity. Saigō Takamori, who led the rebellion, became a hero in Japanese culture. Statues of him were built, and stories of his bravery inspired generations. The Satsuma Rebellion showed how Japan had to let go of some of its old traditions to become a modern nation. It was a painful process, but it helped shape Japan into what it is today, a country that blends its history with progress. While the samurai era ended, their spirit lived on, becoming a part of Japan's proud heritage. The Satsuma Rebellion wasn't just the end of the samurai, it marked the start of a new Japan. After the rebellion was crushed, the Meiji government made sure the samurai system would never return. This rebellion showed Japan that tradition alone couldn't compete with the modern world. The government learned how important it was to stay strong and united. They poured more effort into building a national army, which became the backbone of Japan's rise as a global power. The samurai spirit didn't completely disappear though. It lived on in Japan's culture, influencing things like martial arts, literature, and even the modern military's discipline. Saigō Takamori, despite being defeated, became a symbol of honor and loyalty. Many Japanese people still see him as a hero who stood up for his beliefs even when the odds were against him. The Satsuma Rebellion wasn't just a fight, it was a turning point. It showed what happens when an old way of life collides with the future. The samurai's resistance reminds us of how hard it is to let go of the past, even when change is necessary. It's a story of pride, loss, and transformation that still resonates today. So, what do you think? Would you side with the samurai fighting for honor or the government pushing for progress? Let us know in the comments, and if you love stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe for more history that brings the past to life. See you in the next one.